So, Chris, what brings you to the leadership world?
It all started when I started looking at engineering as a career. I was always interested in taking things apart and putting them back together again. Even as an 8-year-old, it started pretty early. And I loved mechanisms. I actually fell in love with chemistry at one point, but I blew myself up in my home laboratory. So had to change direction after that. So I did electronics, and I loved engineering, and I got into research and development, and I was designing some very interesting stuff for controlling various processes. I got promoted into management, sales management, general management. And I suppose there was an unwritten assumption that people were going to behave just like mechanisms and structures behave, or like chemical formulae behave. It's predictable.
Your assumption, or was
No, I mean, it certainly wasn't drummed into me. It was just something I must have picked up on that was never challenged.
Right.
And it dawned on me, I suppose, late 20s, early 30s, it dawned on me that people actually didn't conform to those laws of science and engineering at all. There was this kind of unpredictability, chaotic and emotional nature to people that just did not fit into my model of how the world worked or works. So I had to find another way of dealing with it, because I have people to manage and to lead and to point in the right direction, all of that. And I suppose concurrently, there was another influence, and that was a kind of philosophical interest that I always had ever since I was a teenager, into the nature of the world and what's going on behind the kind of facade that we take as reality. What's managing that? What's the intelligence behind it? Because it always struck me there was an intelligence there. And I think those two influences came together in my 30s, and I started to understand a little bit more about human nature and how to deal with it, and the fact that you could not treat it like a mechanism. You had to find a different approach. My career developed, and I got into more senior positions. And then when I was about 40, I found myself spending more time in airports than at home. Pretty typical experience, I suspect, for a lot of people. I found the work a bit soul-destroying. I found that situation to be unpalatable. The only alternative was to leave and do my own thing, which I did. And I started off as a business consultant, advising people how to structure their businesses and how to lead them. But I realized that, particularly with small businesses, they are reflections of the people that run them. They're a mirror for the people that own them, run them, manage them, whatever they are. And that if you want to make an impact on a business, your best bet is to work on the individuals that are leading it rather than the business itself. That's where the levers of change are. And eventually, and quite gradually, I evolved into, initially a facilitator working with teams, and then into a coach working with individuals, and then ultimately into someone that creates leadership development programs. So I started writing programs incorporating material. It's a kind of distillation of all the learnings and teachings, both very practical leadership stuff and more esoteric metaphysical stuff. All of this into material supported by some very well-known commentators that are well-known, people like Sadhguru, for instance, and Eckhart Tolle, and many others. And that material supports the coaching that I do with these individuals. And I find that combination of material, content, plus the kind of live coaching interaction is very powerful and works very well. So that's in a nutshell the journey from a curious 8-year-old up to where I am now.